thank you so much for listening and joining me here. Well, I'm in my office in my house. Here on I Do What I Want. I am your host, Hollis. I'm an author of fantasy books. I write 2 different fantasy series, the Rashawn series, which is more of your classic fantasy, and then the Lost Beacon Chronicle series, which is historical fantasy. And I just released Ignited, well, in November, like a couple weeks ago. But it's out. Like my last episode, I was about to release it, so now here we are. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble, it's on all the online places, and you can order it from any of your bookstores. So please, go get it. I also have holiday deals up on my website. I also have posted it on my Instagram, so if you want to see what my holiday book deals are. I know it's a little late. I had to wait for my copies of Ignited to arrive so that I could actually fulfill orders as they came in. So I decided to extend my holiday book deals all the way through the end of January. So even if you don't get them for Christmas, you can just, save some money on some books with some pretty packaging, or you can get them as birthday gifts or New Year's gifts, depending on what you like to do for people in the new year. Why not give them some more adventure, inspire them to read more and feel the rush of adventure and thrills gained through fictional characters where they don't actually take any risks. Good stuff. Yes, but the I'm getting into it. So the Rashawn series, which would be To Save a World and The Queen Witch, both of those books together in a pretty package with a wax seal. That is $35 for both of them, which is usually, if you buy them separately, it would be a little over $40 to buy each of them separately. So it's a really great deal. I'm also signing all of the books. So all the copies that you purchase, I'll sign. I'll be happy to personalize them. You just have to, email me or in the DM on Instagram, tell me that you would like me to make it out to a certain someone or something like that. I'm happy to do that. And, no additional charge, of course. It's just part of the special. And I'm also including a free bookmark with every order. So you'll get a bookmark, you get a signed book and personalized if you so choose. And you get you save roughly $8 or $10. And the Lost Beacon Chronicles, which I am also signing all of those, you can have them personalized, same deal with the bookmark. Those are $30 for Spare the Swallow, which is the origin story of the Lost Beacon Chronicles, and Ignited, which is the first book. So, that's $30 because those books are a little shorter, so they're a little less expensive, but you're still saving roughly $8 to $10 because combined, those are over $35 if you were to buy them each separately. So I think it's actually almost $40. So it's a great holiday deal. It's running through the end of January. You can DM me on Instagram, or you can go to my website, which is in, my profile link, all that great stuff. And that has an email form. If you scroll to the bottom, my holiday deals are also clearly explained and everything on the website. On the homepage, just scroll to the bottom, and there's an email form where you just email me directly and let me know that you want a book. So yeah, if you want the sale, you want, a book gift or whatever. So yeah, just go ahead and email me. Let me know. Again, I'm running it through the end of January. I'm really, really excited and hope that you will buy some signed books. They're really good, I think. I'm still entering contests. They haven't been announced other contests yet, but, To Save a World and The Queen, which won awards, and Spare the Swallow and Ignited are getting entered into other contests, so that's pretty darn exciting. I think I mentioned this in my last podcast, but I'm going to say it again. I am a guest at JordanCon this year. JordanCon is taking place in April of 2024. I am a guest on the fantasy track. I will be there the entire con, and I am thrilled. I will be there with my friend and fellow fantasy author, Alara Dunn, who is the author of The Magic Locker, The Witch's Curse. The Magic Locker is becoming a series. The Witch's Curse is the first book that she wrote in this series that was released July 25th. So it's really good. Yeah, I've been reading it. I love it. It's illustrated. It's great. It's really, really great. So I would, come check us out. Go get your tickets to JordanCon, because it's not just Alara and I. There are going to be some really great guests there. Some other, not just fantasy authors, though. I'm very partial. But a lot of other really great sci-fi authors, publishers, probably some agents. I don't know. But a lot of really cool people, and you should check it out. Come visit me. You can meet me in person and see that I am indeed this ridiculous on a regular basis. And I'll probably cosplay as my characters, because that's a part of my gig. Okay, this episode is going to be the third story in the Power Therapy series, which briefly, I know I go through this every episode, but just want to make sure to give Dr. Vorster his due. So this Power Therapy, these short stories were originally written along with this Power Therapy series that Dr. Kobus Vorster is, licensed psychologist in the UK, and this is his, Power Therapy is his licensed idea and everything else, and he hired me or contracted me in 2020 to do some short stories that would be like fairy tales illustrating the power therapy techniques that he created. So all of the characters, the storyline, that's all mine, but the techniques that the characters are utilizing are Dr. Vorster's power therapy techniques. And if you look up the Power Therapy series on Amazon, you will find them, and then you will also find links to the actual power therapy, which power therapy is designed so that you are given the tools to go off on your own and help yourself. Like, obviously get some therapy in the beginning, but it's designed to let you strengthen your own mental health to the point where you are strong enough and capable to continue your own mental health journey on your own. And it's giving you the tools to take care of yourself. It's teaching you how to do that without having to go to a therapist every week and say, tell me how to fix my issues or tell me what I'm doing wrong. It gives you those tools of self-awareness and, protecting your own mental space and everything else. And it's, it's a really, really good series. Of course, I'm not a licensed psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not any of those things. I do have a personal interest in psychology, but that is as far as it goes. I have no credentials in this subject whatsoever. So I have an itch if you see me leaning on live. Yeah. So that is what this is originally based on. I'm reading these on the podcast because I think they're great. I actually really like the story and the characters that I was creating, and I would love some feedback about whether or not I should continue this series. So I would, of course, rewrite them, possibly as short stories or possibly into another novel, where I would obviously take out any licensed material, and it would just be my characters doing their thing and following the same storyline. But I only wrote 5 of these, and then it was seen that people were using the power therapy and finding success with it. It's a wonderful program, but they weren't really utilizing the fairy tale idea, which was a great whimsical idea, but it wasn't something that the people who were using the power therapy really utilized. So we decided not to continue with the fairy tales, which we were both a little sad about, because Dr. Vorster and I had become friends, and, but he's still a great guy. We still say hello every once in a while, and, and it's wonderful. But I never got to finish the story. So I think I should. Anyway, if you want to catch up, go back to episode 29, which was the October episode. It's called Picking a Fight with Yourself. That's the first short story in this series. And then episode The second short story is Bodyguard, and that was the November episode. So, yeah, you've only got 2 episodes to catch up on if you need to. And if you don't feel like catching up and you just feel like diving in, that's cool too. You do you. You have fun. You have fun. And yeah, sorry. Again, if you're on live, you're seeing me like try to get a hair out of my eye. Anyway, let us dive in. I did not read through this verbally before starting, so, forgive me. It might be a little funny, but, and this is who I am. So if we remember, at the end of Bodyguard, they were captured by the bad soldiers. Jaren is the prince, Keist is his bodyguard, and Amari is the fae woman who was trying to kidnap the prince to help her people and got caught up in the whole mess, and the 3 of them are now prisoners of this cult of the Fang, and we're going to learn more about them. Jaren heard the rustling of chains in the dark as Keist struggled against his shackles. They had been brought to a decrepit tower in the forest and thrown into the dungeon of the place. It was pitch black to his human eyes, but they were able to see their surroundings by torchlight of the guards when they had arrived about an hour ago. They were each shackled to the wall in a 10-by-10 cell, stone walls and a door of iron bars. Apparently, they felt confident enough to leave them alone down here. And they had watched the guards leave after securely locking the iron-barred door. Jaren understood why they would not linger. It was chilly, dank, and it smelled of mildew down here. Besides, they were all shackled to a wall with no light, and only one of them could see in the dark. If they got out of the dungeon, the tower was sure to be crawling with guards and Cult of the Fang members. Keist grunted and paused in his struggling for a few seconds. Then he renewed his efforts. Jaren admired his perseverance. He wished he could feel that hopeful. Presently, he was in a depressive state. It almost felt like a fitting end to his pitiful existence. He had tested his bonds when they had first arrived. He had not given up on living. The shackles seemed solid and tight around his wrists. Jaren wanted to live, but he didn't want to continue living as he had been for his whole life. No one knew who he truly was. He had no friends. He had been depressed his whole life as far as he could remember, and he knew that that wasn't who he really was. He was the result of his situation, not his personality, not his true self. Amari made some noises of struggle as well, but much more quietly. She was likely trying to slide her slim wrists out of the manacles instead of using brute strength as Keist was doing. He hoped she was successful. Amari was the only one who could see in the dark, so it would likely be most beneficial for her to free herself first. Maybe she was skinny enough to get her arm through the bars of the door and pick the lock. Jaren liked this thought very much. It made him feel better. Jaren resolved that he was of no use at present, and that he should try and get some rest. If Amari and Keist got free, it would be better to be well rested in order to escape. Being comfortable was impossible at present, but he was able to get into a tolerable position. Luckily, discomfort never really bothered him. He drifted off to sleep, lulled by the rhythmic clanking of chains and grunts from his 2 companions. It almost felt like having friends. How strange. Jaren found himself standing on a rocky seashore. It all felt so real. It felt as if he were awake, but he knew he was dreaming. He must be. The salt air gently misted against his face, and the giant boulders that jutted out from the water all looked and felt real to him. He recognized this place. He had dreamed of it before, but never so tangibly. He did not understand why, but this place gave him comfort. It made him feel free. He had no waking memories of it at all, but perhaps it was a place long buried away in his mind from that brief time in his life that he was free. The time he could not recall, but he knew had once been. He closed his eyes and savored the solace of sense and sensations. It was a very good dream. He may as well enjoy it. "How the devil did you pull me here?" A foggy and irritated male voice snapped behind him. Jaren's eyes flew open and he spun around to see the stranger. It was a middle-aged human man with salt and pepper hair and beard. He looked quite average as a whole, except his eyes. His eyes were a brilliant emerald green that seemed to penetrate all they looked upon. Besides his very presence, it was also surprising that he wore a long nightshirt that fell just past his knees and was barefoot. It was as if he had been plucked out of bed. "Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Why did you pull me into their fluxwen?" The man asked while fixing Jaren with a hard look. Jaren blinked in utter shock. His what? Fluxwen? What was going on? The man stared at Jaren. Jaren stared back, eyes wide. The man took several brisk steps toward him suddenly. His expression changed from irritation into skeptical concern. "You have no idea what you did, do you?" Jaren was not used to being confronted with concern for his own person. It felt funny. He gulped down to moisten his dry throat. Who are you? Why are you in my dream?" Those emerald eyes scrutinized him for a long moment. Then the man sighed and dropped his head to rub a hand over his face. Oh dear. You have no idea of your own gifts, do you?" How don't you know, boy? Didn't your parents teach you the ways of the Fluxfen?" A look of immeasurable sadness came across Jaren's handsome face. There was no way for him to have had the opportunity. He had no memory of his parents. He wasn't the real prince. He was a double. The king and queen of Tigist had taken him away from his old life when he was only 4 years old. He looked just like their son. He had been brought up in a strange captivity inside the palace walls. Everything the prince learned, everything that happened to the prince, the same went for him. When the prince broke his arm climbing trees at the age of 8, his arm was forcibly broken as well. Even his name was not his own. Jaren was the name of the prince. They called him by that name so that he would respond to it naturally, but it was not the name he was given at birth by his real parents. He did not know that name. He could not recall it. He never knew what happened to his parents or even where he came from. It was horrible, but he hoped they were dead. The idea that his real parents would have given him up or given up looking for him after he was taken was too painful to bear. He needed to believe that they had truly loved him. So they had to be dead. The idea that he was once loved at all is what kept him going. It was what kept him from hurting himself. If someone loved him once, then he had to be worth something more than a puppet for royal bidding. The real him had to be more than that. Privately, he had always felt a strong sense of self, and he cherished it, protected it above all else. He did not know his name, but who knew exactly who he really was? Jaren realized he had been silent too long. He glanced away as he answered the man. I don't know my parents. I was taken away from them when I was 4. I have no idea what you're talking about." The slightest of gasps escaped the man's lips. "Oh dear. One of our very own. Taken. Did they even know what you were?" "What am I?" Jaren surprised himself with the forcefulness in his voice. He was feeling emotional. The stranger, even if he was nothing more than a figment of his imagination, seemed to have answers he needed to know. Things that could tell him who he really was. Answers that would help him understand his true self. That scared little boy inside needed to understand. He had always protected who he was inside. He knew he wasn't the same as the prince. In spite of all the conditioning and abuse, Jaren had never lost his true self. He held on tightly to it. It was the only way he knew to stay sane. The man looked at him with the utmost kindness and some pity. "You and I are part of a community of humans with special abilities. We call ourselves the Sven. It is passed down through bloodlines. We have the ability to travel to places through our dreams. You have probably always felt that you had particularly vivid dreams. When you don't know how to control it, you frequently visit places of pleasant memories. Jaren took a moment to digest this information. Is that why he was always dreamed of this place? Did it hold happy memories for him? Did he not realize he had any truly happy memories like that? He did not realize he had any truly happy memories like that. The man gave him some time. My name is Piper. Melvin Piper. I come from Gannett, where I was comfortably sleeping in my bed until you dragged me out of it, the man continued. He was very curious about this young man in front of him. He looked to be the same age as his long-lost nephew. Piper's sister and her husband had drowned under mysterious circumstances 21 years ago. Their young son had been presumed to have drowned with them, but his body was never recovered. Piper had always suspected the boy was alive and not eaten by the sharks. What is your name? They call me Jaren, he answered absent-mindedly. He had never said it was his name. It wasn't. It was simply what he was called. His head was reeling with questions. Piper's green eyes went wide. Prince Jaren? He saw the resemblance as soon as the name was mentioned. Suddenly everything became clear to him. Piper had always been a clever man. Jaren looked pained. I'm not him. But I'm made to pretend to be him. I'm Prince Jaren's double. They use me when he doesn't want to do something or if it seems dangerous. Then he shook his head as if to clear it. I'm sorry, but I still don't understand. What is the Fluxfen? Piper took a deep breath. He needed to stay focused. This may not be his nephew at all. It could all be a coincidence that he was taken as a child around the same time his sister and her family drowned. Of course, if he was the nephew, that would explain how he was able to pull him into his own Fluxfen. Blood ties make for stronger magic, particularly when one person is going through a time of high emotional distress. The Fluxfen is a place between dreams and waking that we travel in. It is where we are now. You created this subconsciously and brought me here. You usually cannot pull others into your Fluxfen unwillingly, but in times of extreme need, it is possible. It was a leading explanation, on purpose. Piper wanted answers himself. Jaren's head shot up abruptly. Amari and Keist were still trapped in that dungeon. He was still trapped in that dungeon, too. They needed to get out. Without thinking, he closed the distance between them and gripped Piper by the arm in an act of desperation. Piper tried to back away, but the boy had moved so fast that he didn't have time to stop him from making physical contact. It was pitch dark and cold and dank. Piper could feel Jaren still gripping his arm, but he couldn't see a thing. It smelled of stone and mold. This felt very bad indeed. Who are you? How did you appear here? A startled female voice questioned. Who's there? Another voice demanded. This one was gruff and male. Piper heard the rattle of chains. Jaren had brought him to a dungeon. He was trapped in a dungeon with at least 2 other people. That would explain it. Certainly a stressful situation. It's a man in his nightdress, the female voice answered her companion. Piper drew himself up to his full height. It's a long night shirt, thank you. My name is Piper. How can you see me? I'm a dryad fae. We can see in the dark. Can you help us? She was a matter-of-fact and desperate sounding all at once. It was an odd combination. Please, help us, Piper. I don't want to die. Jaren spoke quietly, but all could hear him. He didn't know what he did, but he was happy Piper was here with him now. There was now an unfettered person inside the cell with him. He could possibly get them free. Jaren had 1,000 other questions, but right now getting away from the cult of the Fang was paramount. None of the questions or answers mattered at all if they couldn't escape. Piper, I have no idea who you are or how you got here, but if you are willing to help us, I would be in your debt. Keist said into the darkness. He didn't care how this man appeared. Not right now. The first priority was escape, and hope had just fallen into their laps. He wasn't going to question it. I'm willing to help, but I can't see a damned thing. How am I supposed to help where I can't see? I can see. If you can free my hands, I can create a small amount of light for the rest of you. I can guide you with my voice until then, Amari offered hopefully. Piper shook his head and shrugged. All right, now let's give it a try. Amari made a little excited noise. Okay. Take 2 steps backward, then turn right and walk about 4 paces. Piper did as requested. Through her clear instruction, he was able to locate the Dryad woman. She explained that all of the manacles were fixed to the stone walls via a single pin in the center of the chain. If he could pull the pin from the wall, there would be enough slack in the chain to move relatively freely. Piper tried to pull on it with all his might, but it was stuck well. Amari then instructed him to pick up a large rock on the corner of the cell and bang it against the pin to loosen it. Keist was straining on his own to loosen his pin on the wall, and he thought he felt it give a bit. He was keenly aware that all this noise could bring the guards back at any moment. It was a very slow going with the rock. Since Piper couldn't see, he was relying on his sense of touch to hit the right spot. There were many misses, a few stubbed fingers, and a great amount of frustration. He did not give up, however, and was eventually able to free the pin from the wall with a loud clatter. Amari could have shrieked with joy, but she did not. They all froze to listen for the guards. Long seconds passed. There was no sign of them. Amari clapped her hands and murmured some words of magic. A very simple blue ball of light appeared in the middle of their cell. The light was dim, but it was enough for the others to see. That done, she went to the iron-barred door and began trying to pick the lock. Once Piper's eyes adjusted, he approached the burly red-haired man, who must be the owner of the gruff voice, and began confidently banging the rock against the pin of his chains to free him. It only took 3 hard blows, as his pin seemed looser than the other one. Once free, Keist took the rock from Piper and silently jerked his head toward Amari. Piper went to help her, and Keist worked on freeing the prince. They were getting out of here. Once Jaren was free, he and Keist came over to the iron-barred door to help the others, who weren't having much luck. Jaren looked at the door hinges and had a stroke of genius. He knew how to get out of this. Same way he had snuck out of his cell in the palace on various occasions. He had never been caught. Jaren was actually quite talented at sneaking around, something the real prince did not possess. He found one of the loose pins from the wall, from the wall shackles, and took the rock from Keist. He then positioned the pin to hit the underside of one of the hinge bolts and used the rock as a hammer on the blunt end of the pin. After a few well-placed taps, the hinge bolt loosened enough to be pulled. Keist, who was more than a little impressed with the prince's idea, stopped fiddling with the lock and held the door in place while Jaren loosened the other 2 hinge bolts. Once that was accomplished, Jaren pulled out the hinge bolts and Keist shifted it open. He couldn't open it widely enough for the men to squeeze through, but little Amari could easily slip out and grab the keys on the wall, which she promptly did. They were all working quite well together. Though it was a desperate situation, both Amari and Jaren found themselves appreciating being a part of a team. And once Amari unlocked the door, Keist hefted it away from the doorway. Piper took the keys from Amari and went about figuring out which key unlocked the manacles on their wrists. As he was freeing them, they heard someone coming down the stairs to the dungeon. The commotion had finally been heard. Keist grabbed his manacles with his now free hands to use it as a makeshift flail and ran to the shadows at the base of the staircase to try and cut them off at the pass. To his shock, Amari came with him holding a vial in her hand. "What are you doing? Get back quickly!" Keist urgently whispered as he watched the glow of torchlight begin to illuminate the stairs. They weren't coming quickly, but there was no telling how many of them had decided to investigate the noise. "I can help." the Fey woman whispered back adamantly. Keist didn't have time to argue with her further. The guard was just appearing with his torch thrust out in front of him. Amari surprised him again with a sudden speed as she splashed a few drops of purple liquid on the guard's exposed fingers. An expression of shock froze over the guard's face, and his whole body went rigid and pitched forward. Amari let out a little yelp and got out of the way as Keist caught the paralyzed body with the quiet grunt. Thankfully, the guard was alone. "You should have told me what you were planning," Keist hissed at her as he placed the paralyzed body on the ground. "How do you still have that potion anyway?" Amari shrugged and began going through the guard's belongings. "I had a couple vials stashed in a hidden pocket in my tunic. You missed it when you searched me before." Keist set her with a disapproving glare for a few seconds that she did not notice, which annoyed him. Piper stepped forward. "I should be able to fit in that uniform. Can we get it off him like this?" It seemed a very good idea to him to dress up like the enemy to possibly make for an easier escape. They still had to get out of whatever the structure was, and was sure to be crawling with guards. "He's posable," Amari answered simply. Jaren stepped forward and gingerly began moving the guard's limbs to begin to undress him. "Ah! Yes, posable is an apt description." He grinned as he found how easily he could maneuver the limbs, and discovered that they went about undressing him. Amari made a point to close the guard's eyes. He was completely conscious, so it was very odd to have him staring at them in horror as they worked. Also, his eyes would dry out since he wouldn't be able to blink for an hour or so. Keist lingered near the stairs, listening for more guards as the other three of them worked. It wouldn't be long before someone wondered what had become of the first guard. Thankfully, they made quick and quiet work of it. Within a few minutes, Piper was in the guard's uniform, and the guard was now in Piper's nightshirt. They went through the trouble of locking him back into the cell they had just broken out of, in case the effects of the potion didn't last as long as intended. They didn't want him running back up the stairs to reveal them. "Put your shackles back on without locking them," Jaren instructed Keist and Amari as he slipped his manacles back around his wrists. They followed his instruction. They were all on the same page. Piper was going to try and walk them out of here under the guise of moving the prisoners. A very thin ploy, but it was better than trying to sneak out without one. All was ready. Deep breaths were taken, and they started up the stairs. They soon discovered why it took so long for the guards to come and check on all the noise in the dungeon. It was the middle of the night, and they were sleeping. They were so confident in the security of their dungeon that they did not think there was any chance of the prisoners escaping. Frankly, they would have been absolutely correct if it weren't for the appearance of Piper. They opted to douse the torch and let Amari lead through the dark halls of the tower. It took a small while of careful treading around sleeping or half-asleep guards who barely seemed to care about people walking past. After much holding of breath and careful sneaking, they found a door to the outside. Amari peeked around the corner and came back to report to the others. "There are 2 guards on either side of the door. They both look super sleepy, but they are awake," she whispered. "Do you have any more potion left?" Keist asked. Amari nodded excitedly and produced one last vial. "Is it enough for 2? She nodded again. "It only takes a drop. You just have to make sure to get it on the skin. Since it's all in one vial, you also have to be careful not to pour it all at once." Piper held out his hand for the vial. "I'll go paralyze the both of them while you all wait here. Then we can all just walk out of here." "I go first when we exit," Keist interjected. "There might be more outside. Also, make sure to take their weapons." They all nodded in agreement at this plan. Keist already carried the sword of the first guard. Piper took the vial and approached the 2 guards under the guise of inquiring for pipe tobacco. Thankfully, the other guards didn't seem to notice that he wasn't holding a pipe. He managed to paralyze the 2 of them quietly, and they slumped against the walls. While Jaren and Piper took their swords, Amari mercifully closed the eyes of the guards. They unbolted the door, and Keist stepped outside. No one was there, so she gestured for the others to follow. They quietly shut the doors behind them and escaped into the forest. Ba-ba-bum! That is Protect Your True Self. Well, what did you think? It's pretty cool. I mean, Jaren's not really the prince. He's actually the prince's double, who has been a prisoner, an abused prisoner his entire life. He doesn't know who his parents are, but he might be Piper's nephew. What the hell is this Flux Sven and the Sven people? I'm actually really proud of these ideas. You can see why I'm considering writing this story after all. Or finishing this story after all. I might have to. It might have to be like a little one-off thing, or... yeah, I'm gonna have to figure this out. Maybe I'll have another fantasy series. Oh, goodness, 3 fantasy series. I feel like that's too much. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that Protect Your True Self is something that you all do, because, you know, protecting your true self, as illustrated by Jaren keeping his sanity and all of that, by knowing that he was once loved and that he was not the prisoner that the royal family made him to be, not at his heart. That's what kept him from going insane or just losing all hope. So, isn't that nice? Your true self is important. This has been your little mental health announcement. Checking my notes. All right, so there are only 2 more short stories left. I'm excited. I'm feeling inspired to continue this story now that I'm reading these to all of you, so maybe I'll do whatever I want regardless of feedback. That's kind of my vibe anyway. So obviously the next episode will be in January, sometime around the 10th. Yeah, I'll announce the calendar date on my Instagram when I get around to it, sometime between the 10th and the 15th, whatever that Sunday is in January. That will be the next episode of the podcast, and I believe that one is going to be Cat versus Dog is going to be the name of the technique. The power therapy technique, illustrated, and I am excited. There's some arguing, and that's fun. Always fun to read, not fun to do yourself, but fun as a reader, as an observer. Again, I would just want to mention one more time, we've got the holiday book deals. Go to my website. You can get both books in the Rashawn series, the first 2 books in the Rashawn series for $35, or the first 2 books in the Lost Beacon Chronicles for $30, and I'll sign everything. I'm wrapping everything. You get a free bookmark, and the holiday deals go through January 31st. So you don't have to make it a Christmas gift. You can make it a birthday gift, a just because gift, or a happy new year. Let's start it off with some reading goals. Right? Reading goals. It's not just about fitness goals. You can have more than one resolution, people. You can have a lot. Or you don't have to work out at all. You can just make your mind healthier with good books. So, all right, I'm going to say thank you so much for listening, and I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful evening.